Do you want more kids?
Say what?
Do you want more kids? The Who Do You Think You Are podcast is sponsored by Good Trip Inc. It's a super dope gallery with a super dope artist that owns it. Black owned, 416 South McDowell Street, downtown Raleigh. Y'all come through, check him out. Tell him that SP the Writer sent you.
Owner of Good Trip Tattoo and Art. My passion is creating art, and there's no better feeling than seeing a happy client.
If it tastes like chicken, then
you might as well eat
just
chicken, right?
And we can pretend, you know.
You know, they eat dog in some places.
Yeah.
I've never had dog. I mean, I think we've all had cat. We eat Chinese food at some point. You don't eat Chinese food?
Not anymore.
But you used to.
I used
so
to,
you've had some cat. You've had some Garfield then.
But that's ignorant. We shouldn't say that.
It is kind of ignorant. But it's also true at the same time.
I don't know. You see them getting the cats?
No, but they always got the little cat with the paw on the counter.
Oh my God.
That do like that, and I tried to buy one of them from somebody, and they would never, they would not sell it to me. I told them I'd give them $1,000 for it, and they was like, nah.
We can't be this way. We just can't.
But I am.
Can't be this
I'm
way.
me.
They say it's ignorant, so.
Who is they?
Society, because everything's ignorant.
But everything isn't, though.
Can be. Can be.
So what is ignorant to you? What's something that's ignorant to you?
I think that ignorance stems from not fully understanding the entirety of a thing and just speaking from a lack of a lack of education.
Gotcha. And so what's something that you're actually ignorant about that you didn't know you were ignorant about?
The LGBTQ community. In many ways, it's ever changing and ever evolving, and if you're not having enough fruitful conversations with people that are part of the community or just doing your own research, you can you are ignorant because you don't know.
Yeah, I've learned quite a bit about certain segments of the community in the past couple years.
And you have to be really careful with not applying it as a general statement, because what's true for this group of people that you might have read, it
may be completely different.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely an eye opener. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Because I was the most ignorant, probably.
Mm-hmm. I think most of us are, and I think coming from me, a Christian upbringing, that scope, that perspective is extremely closed-minded, and it can be extremely hurtful. So
that'll lead me into my first question then.
Oh, okay.
So within the scope of not just the LGBT community, but in general, who do you think you are?
So I always define myself based on how I show up in the world. So first and foremost, mom. I would say teacher, and I still am, even though I'm not teaching in the classroom.
Right, and we're going to get to that.
Creative. Mom, teacher, and creative.
Gotcha.
When I'm speaking about who I am, and then when I start to go underneath those layers, and I'm gay, I'm this being that is constantly seeking answers or reconciliation from my past, and also trying to evolve into who I'm supposed to be.
Right.
So I think I'm definitely someone that's inquisitive in terms of breaking whatever cycles might be present and building new.
Have you always been inquisitive in that way, or was there something that transitioned you?
I've always been inquisitive in that way, and also trying to remain respectable in terms of my Christianity. That's the thing I didn't mention. So I should say I'm spiritual. growing up, I grew up in a Baptist church, and a Haitian Baptist church at
Oh,
that.
wow.
And there is a lot of pressure that is placed on you as you walk into your Christian self, and what that means in the church. And, that can be very restricting.
Right.
And so you are kind of taught like fear and reverence is synonymous. And so there's a fear to question. Like, this is what the Bible says, this is what you should do.
Right.
But as you get older and you have these different life experiences, you're like, no, questions are actually okay. Jesus asked questions.
Right. He did.
And many times that's how he spoke to his followers. So becoming more comfortable with asking the uncomfortable questions.
Where do you think you are on that meter? If you're going from, I guess, 1 to 10, being
I'd say
most
a 6.
comfortable.
Comfortable 6, yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
And so, a year ago, where were you at on that meter?
Probably a 2.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a big jump.
Yeah. Well, the pandemic will do that to you, right? You
True.
start seeing that. I think we always know on some intellectual level, life is short.
Yeah.
But when you see that your entire sense of normalcy has been kind of cut off from you, you start to, I don't want to say have the audacity, but you start to gain more courage, and you start to become more bold, because I don't think that I ever thought in my lifetime that we would have dealt with what we dealt with.
Right.
And so it's like, shit, if my time here is limited, or since my time here is limited, I've always known that, but I think there's a difference when you're actually within tangible reach of it. Like,
Yeah.
if you're sitting, like, in the midst of it, people dying to the left of you, to the right of you. Every time you're on Facebook, you're seeing another rest in peace. And so then you start to really ask those hard questions of, like, who the fuck am I trying to protect?
Right.
So.
The pandemic, so a lot of us were in our minds or going out of our minds during the pandemic. Did you feel at any point that you were kind of losing it?
I definitely did. I was freshly divorced. I was also going through a breakup. I was at a school that I was miserable at, and so all of those things combined, and there was no sort of outlet outside of writing. But then, like, after a while, you're
Right.
looking at those words looking at you, and it's like, I can't do anything about this. So I felt trapped, and there was a suffocation that happened, because there wasn't, oh, let me just call so-and-so so we could get together. I do remember last June, I just got in a car, and I went and visited my best friend in Atlanta. And Atlanta, it's like the rules never applied to them. It was
Right,
like pandemic
ever.
where. And I just kind of let myself enjoy the things that we hadn't been able to.
Right.
And that was freeing in a sense. And when I got back to North Carolina, it was back to this kind of closed, way of being. But some of it was needed, like that stillness that I think the pandemic, for me, it gave me, was absolutely needed, because we have this like urgency culture that we subscribe to, and the pandemic forced you to sit your ass
Sit
down.
still, yeah.
Yes.
And so, pre-pandemic, you talk about the urgency culture. Were you completely in the urgency culture, or was it more of kind of a balance for you, and then it just became more of like, okay, now I'm really quiet in my mind to be able to...
Pre-pandemic, one of the beautiful things of teaching is that you develop a skill to do many things at once. The downfall of that is you start to do it so well, you don't even recognize, like, I know that I ate, but I wasn't tasting my food. When I think about books that I read, Thich Nhat Hanh, I always mess up his name, but there's a stillness and a mindfulness that he speaks to. You don't do that in teaching. Like, you swallow your food.
Right.
You, like, on your way to go get papers printed, you know that you've made a stop in the bathroom. You hope that you've cleaned yourself correctly. Like, it's
Right.
just, so I was always in urgency culture.
Gotcha.
And in the midst of the pandemic, it forced me, like, no, you actually don't have to scarf down this food in 3 minutes.
You can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what made you want to become a teacher?
I think the profession in many ways found me. I've always taught in some capacity in my life, and so doing it as an actual profession, the biggest thing for me was like, oh, you get your summers off. That's what everyone's like.
Right.
I was like, okay, let's do this.
I heard somebody say that last night.
I had been going from field to field, banking, insurance, and you get tired of the jumping around. So I wanted something that was consistent, but also stimulating. Every day is not going to look the same, and I loved that part of it.
Right.
I loved being able to connect with younger minds and challenge them and stretch them, and they too challenge you and stretch you, because you have a classroom of 30 students. Maybe 10 of them learn the same way, right?
Right.
Then you have another 5 who learn a different way. Then the rest of them don't even want to be there. How do you
do that?
They call it differentiation. So for me, I am an avid believer that we all have different learning styles. And so one of the things you have to develop, or some of us have it innately, is teaching to different learning styles. So if I have someone who's a kinesthetic learner, oh, I need to make sure this lesson has some movement.
Right.
If I have someone who's auditory, I need to make sure that I'm
mixing it up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If someone's a visual learner, oh, you probably want to have a PowerPoint, something that they can actually see.
Right.
So just being mindful of those learning styles and knowing how to, I guess, dole out each of those different things.
Right.
And hopefully it comes together where everyone leaves feeling like, oh, I got it.
Yeah.
If I'm the person that takes notes, I got it from taking notes. If I'm the person that needed to get up and do a skit, I got it from that.
Right.
You know, so that was probably my biggest success, being able to take a concept and break it into different parts so that each student hopefully felt connected in some way.
What age group were you teaching?
So I started with 10th graders, so
Oh, wow.
15, 16.
I already know that was crazy.
That's my favorite age, because I feel like my 10th grade self is the thing I'm the closest to when I think about my academic years. And so I was easily able to build a rapport with the kids. Some of them like called me mom, you know, because I was able to understand what it felt like to be that age.
Yeah.
And so the connection part was very easy.
Right.
I could easily get into curriculum because I connected with them outside of the school.
So let's go to 10th grade then.
Okay.
What was Ashlee the 10th grader like?
Angry. I had just moved to Georgia from New York. I was confused. I felt alone. And I think there was a curiosity to want to explore and question different parts of myself that I don't feel like I was able to do. And I had to find an outlet for that. And I didn't feel like I had an outlet, because when you move from up north to the south, most of these kids have grown up with each other. They start at elementary up. So there was a lot of clique-like behavior. So there was just like, damn. And even the people who would like kind of invite you into their circles, it would be, remember the 6th grade? I don't remember in the 6th grade because I wasn't here.
I was in New York.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that got annoying. So you just kind of isolate yourself. And I was the person in high school, I didn't belong to a clique per se, but I had different friends from different areas in high school because I just couldn't stick to one. Right.
Yeah. And so, did you graduate high school in Georgia?
I did.
Okay. And so then once you graduated high school, then what happened?
I just knew, I was like, I'm going back to New York. I'm going to go to St. John's University. Like,
Okay,
I had
St.
it all
John's.
planned out. I did not. I went to Valdosta State. I went further south.
Okay.
I think by then I had an appreciation for what the South brought. And I just knew I wanted to be away from my parents, but close enough to make a trip. So Valdosta was 4 hours away, and it was perfect.
Okay.
And then I transferred to Georgia State because I missed the city life, and graduated from Georgia State.
With a major in?
English.
Yes. Got you. Which is why you be really on all the,
You know, I try to let people live.
Yo, I promise you, like, I mean, because some of us know, and we just don't care.
Yeah.
Then some of us don't know.
And that's the part that's like upsetting. I literally have to talk to myself and talk myself out of
reprimanded everyone.
yes. Like yesterday I was writing the status like I just want some of you to proofread before you post.
Right.
Then I just had to completely delete it because you know what? I know what it is, what it's like to feel when you're like revved up and all you want to do is type because that's an outlet. That's an outlet, and sometimes the phone will autocorrect to what they think it should be.
Right.
So I'm gonna give y'all grace.
Until when?
I don't know because sometimes it's a sermon that's just boiling, and I feel like let me answer the call. I am a vessel, and so let me be this grammatical vessel for you, and just let you know.
Write a poem about it. Perform the piece, and then because no one questions a poem,
right?
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you can preach your sermon.
Yeah.
In a a little subtle way, kind of.
Yeah, subtle and in your face. I like that.
Right.
Possibly.
Yeah. I just started proofreading some of my statuses, and I don't even proofread it to the point where it's like, yo, let me get everything right.
I've seen
yeah, I'm sure.
some improvements. So I thought you had an assistant. I was like, praise him.
Nah, I just, because I don't really care about social media, for real.
Sometimes you just want to get the thought out, and I am getting to that point where I get it. Like sometimes it's like, I meant to type this, and I am typing this, but again, the phone has its own, it's AI, right? So you have to be mindful of that. So I get it.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes it don't even be the phone, it be me. But because I really just, I'm on the move, I'm on the go, and I'm like, I need to post something.
Right.
Because that's the culture, if they don't see it, it didn't happen. And blah, blah.
Absolutely.
And so I would just be like, yo, let me get this out of the way so I can go about my life. Because I don't have the notifications for likes on, comments I'll check every now and then because I know people are engaging.
Right.
But I don't really be so I was just like, yo, let me post it. And then I started reading back at something because, the Facebook memories.
Yes.
And I'm like.
It's embarrassing for me, but I see.
Yes.
Like when I was in college, I don't know what I was thinking, but some of the ways my shorthand, it was deplorable. So I made a commitment that I'm going to type out because I remember when I would have to write my college papers, I was starting to use the same language in spelling, and no one wants that.
Not in academia.
Right. And so I just said, you know what, I'm going to make a commitment to not do as much shorthand.
Right.
Because the thing is, our brain is a muscle, and whatever it is that we engage the most will be the thing that comes easier. And so I wanted to make sure that I had access to.
Now I'm gonna be thinking even more about it. Like, okay, Ashley is reading this post.
No.
Let me make sure it's on point. But not just for that. But like you said, it's embarrassing.
Right.
And I'm not easily embarrassed at all. But when I was looking back, I'm like, yo, I call myself SP the writer, and this is what I'm writing.
And when you're thinking about people you want to collaborate with, if they are researchers and they look at your stuff, you don't get a chance to defend yourself.
Right.
And so this is your body of work, and this is what's out in the world. And, we can go back and forth about it, but there are people who judge you based on that.
Right.
And so for me, I think about this is a representation of me. What do I want to rep me?
This is true. You talk about ignorance. I would say, if I use the word wrong or something like that and somebody pointed out to me, I'm like, oh, well, people know I can write poetry, so I'm good.
Right.
But how ignorant was that? You know what I mean? So I'm trying to do a better job.
People don't know. And the thing is, every day you're getting new followers. And so that person who does not know you, and this is their first time seeing your stuff, they're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
They're going to just be like, whoa. I've stopped reading statuses when I see the "to" is used wrong. I can't.
Right.
And it could be shared
however
from
many
here
times.
to fucking Cambodia. I'm not reading it.
Not Cambodia,
yes. I'm not.
Of all places. Have you been to Cambodia?
No, it just came to mind,
Most of the times people would say China.
I was trying to go a different route, you know.
I'm not mad at it at
I'm trying
all.
not to be trope-like, you know, just.
Not trope like. So you said a little while ago, you said that the profession of teaching found you. How did it lose you?
The system. I started at a Title I school.
Explain what a Title I school is.
Title I schools are typically severely underfunded. They are typically heavily populated with Black and brown people. And so they usually receive additional funds to hopefully get them on the same playing field as other schools that are not.
And that funding comes from the state? Okay.
And it's a lot of lack of resources because, however, even though they're getting those additional funds, they're not allocating them properly. They're not utilizing them in ways that are effective for the school to be successful. So
give me an example. What is something that they're allocating it to that they probably should be allocating it to?
So, for instance, they'll use they'll allocate it towards materials that, first of all, you didn't talk with the teachers who are in the classroom to ask, what resources do you need?
Right.
So they're always buying some next program, the newest program. But there's no PD given on it, which means professional development on how to use it effectively. Or it's something that's outdated that doesn't even apply to the children that we're teaching.
Right.
And so
it's useless.
Exactly. Like Guilford rolled out My Perspective. They drill as a teacher that you need to teach to the test, the standardized test that they take. The language on My Perspective does not match what they will see on the test. And so there's this huge gap. And as a teacher, we have literally been trained and socialized and conditioned to pull from different resources to make this whole thing work.
Right.
And I'm not fine. I'm not against, charcuterie teaching, right? Like pulling from these different resources and making, something that is beneficial for the child to take away. But when you cut my hands and tell me you can only use this one resource, so My Perspective, but this doesn't fit. It doesn't fit for the test. It doesn't fit for them, for the student themselves. Like, children need to see themselves in a work.
Right.
And I remember one year particularly when the book The Hate You Give came out. One of the teachers had to get approval to teach it. If I'm the professional in my classroom, I need you to trust that I'm going to pick choose something that is edifying and something where the child can see themselves, connection. And you go through all this red tape, and it's just at the end of the day, you realize, oh, I'm fighting against a system that I'm going to lose. Like, I got reprimanded for doing a novel study. This is English class. We should be reading excerpts. They're not going to read a novel on the test. I'm not only teaching to the test. What happens when they go to college and they have to read a whole fucking book in a weekend and be able to crank out a paper? And so, like, it would bother me because it's like we're not setting these kids up to be successful for the next phase in their life.
Right.
You want me to just do this, like, what did I call it? This microwave teaching, and I'm not interested in that. I wanted to do something slow cooked, something that lends itself to you year after year after year. And so when you realize they're just treating these kids like they're on this conveyor belt, just trying to pass them through. They don't care that we're setting them up for incarceration. They don't care that they're setting them up for living a life of poverty when we're not teaching to the whole of the student.
Right.
There won't be adequate there's usually not adequate programming for children who come from backgrounds that are not necessarily, like, some of them, like, are attending a grade that their parents didn't even make it to. So how do you keep them invested? Like, if your parent didn't make it past 9th grade and you're in 10th grade, at this point, you have got to take care of all the things by yourself, because there's nothing that your parent can teach you, because you've gone further than they have.
Right.
And we don't have the backing or the funding to help with those efforts. Because I do think we should, when we consider the whole of the student, it is also holding programs for parents to have access to.
Right.
Like Kennedy, my daughter, is learning math that I've never heard before.
Yeah, that math is crazy. The new math. That's what I call
Yes,
it.
it's absolutely insane. And
Yeah.
being an educator, I have a leg up, or had a leg up. I still will.
Right.
But what if I'm not in education?
Yeah. Which most parents aren't.
They aren't, and they're trusting us as the professionals to do something that they don't even have access to because it's not what they learned.
Right.
And where's the
That's-
fill-in of
that's-
that gap?
That's tough, and I know a lot of teachers. I know a lot of teachers that get burned out, and I'm wondering, from your point of view, do you feel like most teachers think the way that you think?
Every conversation I've had with a teacher, it's like deja vu. I've been here before. It's never anything new. Like, they love the kids.
Right.
They know that there are tough days, but what usually fucks them up, or what usually is like, I have to get out of here, is administration and the way the system is set up.
So how does the system change? Because somebody might ask, playing devil's advocate, right? They're like, yo, so like you're one of the teachers that not only understands this, but has the wherewithal to possibly help change it. And if you lead the education.
So I thought one of the fixers was going to a charter school, which I did, and that actually, then we can get into the argument of it doesn't usually help because charter schools take funding from the public schools.
Do they?
They get some money from the state, so then that leaves the public schools more underfunded. So even though with charter schools, the setup that I liked about it is if you are working for a principal who has a clear vision on what education should look like, it is an amazing experience. If you have someone like the last school that I worked at that was Republican, that was super close-minded, that had these really troglodytic views, it can be extremely harmful to the community and just to the children that actually attend that school, because you're actually not helping out. So then charter schools, the argument has been made, they make things worse. So for me, when I'm thinking, because I'm an extremist, and I think about like the fact that we say defund the police, maybe these public schools, they do need funding, but there needs to be a rethinking of what that looks like.
Okay.
I think you need to have teachers who are actually teachers
Right.
running the school, because someone who came to teach for 2 years and is now in administration has no fucking idea about what the classroom needs.
Right.
So I've heard of companies where it's completely run by the employees. I think we need to change the infrastructure.
So, all right. So now I'm wondering, are there any schools like that in the surrounding area that you know of?
Not to my knowledge.
That's
I know
crazy.
that independent schools have a different approach as well, and I won't say it's closely like what I just said. But the independent schools, because they are private,
Right.
they tend to have it more right than not. But the problem is we have people who are not qualified to be in the positions that they have, making decisions that they should not be making.
Right.
And we need to have people that are in the classroom actually making those decisions, because they are the ones who have the front row seat as to what our kids need.
Right.
I'd love to see a school with that model where it's a principal who actually still teaches.
Right.
Like, you have to have one class.
Would you jump back in? If you found that?
My desire is to actually just work with schools and be contracted alongside them.
Gotcha.
Go in for
Help fix the
exactly.
processes, all that good
right.
stuff.
And I mean, I'm speaking to just, our kids don't have enough access, in my opinion, to professionals like in the real world.
Right.
So for me, as a writer, as an editor, as an artist, I want to go in there, do my little 10-week workshop, and then, move on to other schools. Like, that is my dream. I don't want to say there's no need for the classroom, because I loved what I did.
Right.
I loved being in the classroom. I also understand that there are ways that a teacher who has a rapport with a child every day is not always going to reach the child. But when you have a guest come in,
Yeah.
it's like, it's a different
Vibe,
concept.
yeah.
And you know, let's think about us as adults. When we come into work every day, that stuff gets monotonous.
Routine, yeah.
Right. But then when you see just that little bit of difference,
Yeah.
your mind is different around it. The way you process, the way you show up is different. I think it just jolts you in a different way. And that's what our kids need when I'm thinking about where they come from. They're in electronics, so they're used to constantly being engaged.
Right.
So we just need to shake up how we're looking at it.
Is Kennedy in the classroom, or is she
stayed,
homeschooled?
She stayed virtual.
Okay.
And that was challenging because Roblox is a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I had to get to a point where I had to block sites off. Guilford County actually towards the end of the year put a block on YouTube because they were finding like the kids were
on YouTube all day.
all day. They in class, but they got a different window open.
Right.
So.
Wow. So as a parent, as a mom, being in the educational system and understanding the pitfalls with that, and then having your daughter now, you know, one of the people you love the most, being in this educational system that is screwed up, how do you navigate that?
A lot of doing our own projects, doing our own thing, because I recognize it, and it's never the teacher's job to teach the child everything. That's why we need to be in partnership with each other.
Right.
I remember, and I know that they still have PTA meetings, but there's a lack of parental involvement.
Right.
Because it's not a non sequitur, but it is a point that I feel like we need to say. The work-life balance is not one that's balancing, you know?
Yeah.
Parents are overworked, and so they are trusting. I would literally, I recall coming from work most days, doing one of these, praying she doesn't need help, because I was too tired to help. So, it's hard to answer your question because it's so layered and nuanced.
Right.
It's not just, oh, how do I combat this? It's, let's first of all look at the structure of the job that I'm holding. You know what I'm saying? The jobs that we hold. People outside of education, some of them working 2 jobs.
True.
And so when you're thinking about trying to fill in those gaps, you just hope for the best.
Right. And that's if you even know how to fill in the gap.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Can't fill in what you don't know.
Man, do you want more kids?
Say what?
Do you want more kids?
She
said, say what?
I believe in letting God make that decision for me. As it stands, unless I'm in a position to show up differently in terms of being more present in a way that I couldn't be for Kennedy, I'm not interested unless I can provide that presence there. I've thought about fostering because I don't want to put my body through.
Listen,
make it,
that is an amazing. I've never been through it, obviously, but that's crazy.
The closest to death, right? And so
that's wild, yo. Childbirth is something else.
Yeah.
Like I had to hold her leg. The doctor was like, "Yeah, hold." I'm like, "Yo, like, don't you get paid a lot of money to do that? Like, why I gotta do that? Where the stirrups at?" And I'm like, "Yo, this is some crazy shit."
It's a lot.
Y'all women are something else, yo. Y'all literally grow human beings.
Grow them.
Like most people, you know, they grow some collards or some watermelons, some plants. Y'all grow humans.
And then you have to eject them from your body.
Eject, yes, that is the correct word, because that's what happens.
Yeah.
And then you raise them.
Yeah. The easy part was growing her in my stomach.
Right.
The raising is definitely difficult.
What's the hardest part about being a mom?
Trying to not be the thing that she needs therapy for.
That's I've never heard that response before.
Yeah.
Now my mind is in a million different places. But I think just in you saying that, because you have that mindset, I feel like that you come out on, and she comes out on
That's the hope, but sometimes we become so obsessed with it, then we do the thing that we were
Trying
trying
too
not
hard.
to do.
Yeah.
So I have been really intentional about leading with intuition. One of the things I felt that was denied to me in my own upbringing was like conversations.
Right.
And so I am more careful and intentional of having conversations with her, inviting her in. And that's a delicate balance because I think if you give kids too much autonomy, then they think they run things.
Right.
And then, I got to slap you.
Right.
Not in
They
an
your
abusive
best
way,
friend.
but just
Nah,
like,
I get
bring you back to reality.
Right. Right.
And so it's like finding that balance. Like, yeah, we can be in partnership about, hey, what are you in the mood for today to eat?
Yeah.
But we're not going to be in partnership with, you just don't feel like going to school. So like, just finding that balance it's hard because it's like, I want you to be your own person, and I have to try to steer you when I think you might be going too far right, too far left. So.
Yeah. So take me back to the moment you found out you were pregnant.
Oh, that was a fun memory. It was
How old were you?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I was 21.
Okay.
22, excuse me. 22.
Okay.
It was Memorial Day weekend, and I had a few friends come visit, and so we went to Myrtle Beach. And my bathing suit was just not. It wasn't fitting the way that I remembered. I was like, I mean, I know I put on a few pounds, but it was.
Right.
And looking at pictures, I saw the weight on my face. And when we got back, I don't ever throw up. I threw up having like breakfast, something that I always eat. And I was like, something's not, it's not clicking right now.
Growing a human.
Right. And then went to the doctor because I was like, this is a little scary. I'm not sure what's happening. And then he confirmed.
Right.
It's cousin.
And how did you feel? Were you happy? Were you scared?
I reverted to my college self. I was scared. I didn't tell my mom I was pregnant until I was close to 6 months pregnant. Even though I was married, I reverted to my college self. Like,
why?
I felt like I was in trouble.
Even though you were married?
Yeah, because it wasn't in the cards. It wasn't something we were planning. It wasn't something we were not planning,
Right.
obviously, because we didn't take the other precautions. But it's just so interesting how if it's not something that you necessarily planned for. There's an age for me that I reverted to. Like, I just reverted back to my college self because college me wasn't ready for a child. And I wasn't even graduated yet, actually. I had to stop going to school, or I chose to stop attending school so that I could move to be in the same state as my husband, or my then husband. So I wasn't done with school. There was all these things like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be doing this, not having a child.
Having a baby,
Yeah.
That's I can, obviously we're not, you're a woman, I'm a man, but I had a child in college too.
Yeah.
He was born a day before I turned 21.
Wow.
So I understand from that mindset, like, my whole life just changed. Like, I still, that was the first time since I had left home, because when I left home, I'm like, I'm grown now.
Yeah.
Can't nobody tell me nothing. That was the first time I did feel like, but I'm still a kid.
Exactly. That's what comes up. Like, I'm still a kid. Like,
it's crazy how we want to be so grown, and then something brings you back to
adulting is
ghetto. So would you go back to being a kid if you could?
No, I would not. I often visit the times in college. You're like an adult, but not fully an adult.
Right.
Like, that's probably
that middle
the
ground.
best of both worlds.
Right.
Like, you still have to decide when you're gonna go to bed so that you can make it to classes on time and not be on academic probation.
Right.
But I think there's not some of what comes up in adulthood. Like, if I don't pay I'm not gonna say like if I didn't pay my bills in college, I would still have lights on, but it's just a different kind of pressure. I think in college life, I felt like I could skin my knee and it not be that like the end of the world.
Yeah.
In adulthood, I feel like it is.
But it's not.
It's not, but that's
But
my
you
own
feel like it, yeah.
pressure because there's not that cushion anymore.
Right.
Not in the same way you felt like you had access to in college. Like I could call my mother, like,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying I can't call her now. Well, I am saying that, but that's another conversation. But as you get older, you realize, oh shit, I'm on the same path as my own parent.
Right.
Like, there is no getting me out of jail card, right?
Yeah.
Like I have to make sure I have enough resources to bail myself out of what I get myself into.
Right. So we're not gonna skate past that. So why can't you call your mother?
So, in all transparency, several years ago, when I realized that the marriage was not working, and my ex-husband and my now ex-husband and I decided to go our separate ways. He was the first person that I came out to, and that was, in many ways, like, I guess the sort of like the first step in coming into my true self, or not having to hide anymore. And so once I came out to him, I eventually wrote my mother a letter and said, hey, I know that you know that Sean and I are divorcing. Here's another kicker. I like girls. And she was, taken aback.
Right.
So much that she drove 2 states over to demand that I tell her in her face. And initially, I do want to say there was an attempt to kind of talk about everything other than this thing,
right.
which was hard because when it's part of who you are, I'm a writer. If I'm going to have any semblance of a relationship with anyone, I can't not talk about writing.
Right.
And so the conversations would be extremely strange. So, how's the weather? Like, I have an Apple phone, and I can literally see what the weather is.
Right.
And so eventually it became like this. It wasn't a screaming match, but it was like a video match, right? She'd send me videos about how my soul is damned and condemned. And I'd be like, oh, wait a minute, let me send you this video. And then because parents, especially Caribbean parents, have like this cognitive dissonance thing going on. Mm-hmm. Don't you disrespect me like that. But you disrespecting me by sending me these videos.
Right.
So let's both not do it. And we just couldn't get to a place of where I didn't feel like I had to hide or chisel away or deny, and so we just don't talk. She essentially says she needs to love me from a distance. And
how long ago?
It has been 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are you and your dad?
Oh no. My biological father was never in my life.
Gotcha.
My mother married my brother's father,
hold on.
Brother's father. We don't have the same father.
Okay.
And she led me to believe he was my father, and I found out at 16 that he was not my biological father. That caused a strain there, and eventually, when they dissolved of their marriage, he and I, did not.
Wow.
We became a casualty of that as well.
So I listened to a lot of Eric Thomas, mm-hmm. and his story. Mm-hmm. his mom didn't reveal to him who his dad actually mm-hmm. was, and so I've never not known who my father mm-hmm. was, and so I'm wondering, and I'm trying to feel. I'm always trying to feel how somebody else feels mm-hmm. in those mm-hmm. types of moments. When you found out, how old were you?
I was 16. And I don't want to say
that was
found
right
out.
around 10th grade.
Yep, I confirmed at 16. I remember journaling often about how I did not feel like this man was my father. I don't know why I had that language, or the language that I had access to, that was the language, but I remember saying it. And so when I found out at 16, we were literally, they had an explosive argument. He left. And she was like, sit down, I need to tell you something. And she's crying at across from me. And I'm like, what is it? And then I just say, Daddy's not my daddy. And she just stares at me, the kind of the way that you are.
Right.
Confirming.
Right.
Doesn't say yes, but it's just in her eyes, she's telling me. And then I repeat it again. She was never able to say it. I was the one that said it. You have a mosquito friend.
Yeah, I see, right?
That's the moment of levity because it was getting heavy. Thank you, mosquito.
Listen, messed up the moment, right?
Yes.
Or maybe saved you from the moment a little
Exactly.
bit.
Yes.
That's wild. And so, you and your mother's relationship at that point went
I think
to
that's
what?
when she was no longer this image of piety for me. Everything that she was trying to control in terms of the narrative of wait till marriage and like all of that came crumbling down for me. And it's like that's the moment, because I know for girls and their moms there's just like this unspoken pressure.
Yeah.
And you put your mom on this pedestal. She was no longer on the pedestal for me. She was very human in that moment.
Right.
Not in a way where I loved her less, but in a way where it was like, I'm so glad that you're not this perfect being that you kept trying to convince me you were. I felt like I could finally just let go a little bit.
How do you think it was? I mean, obviously, she's crying and all that stuff, but then moving past that mentally and emotionally, how do you think that was for her, to know that now you knew?
I think there was some relief for her, and there was also some fear, because I don't want to say I was never close with my brother's father, but the closeness that was there already felt fragile. And so it wasn't, I don't think that it helped anything.
Right.
Things got more strange.
Right.
If I'm to give an adjective, they got more strange.
Yeah.
You know.
You think you and your mom will reconcile?
So that is a question I'm often asking myself and ruminating over. I know that I'm open to reconciliation if it means acknowledging the whole of me. If it does not, then we just continue to be on this, and I parent from a space where I never make my daughter feel that way.
Right.
That I love her based on conditions, or I can only speak to her based on conditions, based on things that I think that she should be doing with her life. It's just, the silence is that lesson for me.
Yeah, and that's so. I want to talk about that too, because you seem very open in front of your daughter. Because I know I was like, hey, look, the conversation changed.
Yeah.
That your daughter's gonna be here, and you're like, no, we good.
Yeah.
So, was it hard for you to get to that point?
No. So, complete honesty, I knew that I did not want to be a parent very early on. Like, that was not my jam. I was like, I don't know that I want to be better, because that's what parenting forces you. If you're going to be in it, it forces you to change. It forces you to confront the shit that you run away from. And so I remember when I found out, I had a journal dedicated to her. I did not find out what her sex was. It was just about bonding.
Right.
It was just about and like I was reading all these books on trying to unlearn some of the things that I thought that I was denied in my own childhood, so that I can make sure that she had it.
Right.
So it's not a question of like, is it harder for me?
Yeah.
It's like, this is what I need to do to make sure that she is her whole self.
Right. But it was hard for you to open up to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know just recently you performed.
Yeah.
And the pieces that you performed were openly gay pieces, and you said that was your first time. And I didn't even realize, I haven't heard her perform these type pieces before.
Yeah.
And I was going back looking at the recordings that I have, and I'm just like, you could tell that you were like super passionate about letting the world know at that particular moment, like, hey, this is who I am, and accept me or don't.
And that's okay. But for me, it was more so about like whenever I'm asked to do a set and it's not theme based, I think of it as taking you or inviting you into a journey of who I am and what I'm working through.
Right.
And when I've been in the past, prior to that particular night, I found myself cutting out the parts of who I was. And it wasn't dishonest, but it was just not as liberating as this last.
Worried about judgment?
Yeah, absolutely. Judgment and safety. Like, that is super important. I think that God bless me aesthetically or whatever, okay? So somebody might think I'm fine somewhere. And
A lot of wares.
sometimes those attractions can be shown in ways that are aggressive, and when you say, I actually don't like, X, Y's, I just like XX's, that's what
Right.
I like women, right? That can be a dangerous thing, because some men have not necessarily been socialized or conditioned to understand what it means to be rejected.
Right.
Or they take rejection as this like thing that must result in violence of some way. And so I have been very intentional about, like, I don't know that I want to engage in that way or be approached in a way where I feel unsafe because you think that I should live this way.
And that's so crazy because, like, as a straight male, I never have to think about that.
Yeah.
And I have these dialogues with some of my friends, and they're like, yeah, I gave this guy my number today, but I don't like. And I'm like, well, why'd you give him your number?
Because you felt like you couldn't say no.
Right. I'm starting to understand it more, but I was just always like, that's stupid. Like, yo, just tell the dude you don't want to give me a number, drive off, walk away, whatever.
Except then, you wasn't that cute anyway, bitch. Like who wants to deal with that? So let me just pacify you.
For the moment.
I remember it got to the point where guys would hold you hostage with the number that you gave them and call you right then and there to make sure you gave the right number, because there was a point in time women would just give some
Mickeys.
number, right?
We used to call them Mickeys down here. Yeah.
And so, no, let me call you right now so you can see it's me. Oh, so the 9 I told you is actually an 8.
Right.
Like, now you're trying to fix it because you now feel like, oh, I'm running the potential of being unsafe because I didn't want to give you my number, but I felt like I couldn't tell you no, so I came up with a number. So it's a lot that you have to navigate when it should just really be as simple as no.
So as a guy who's not like that, because I recognized a long time ago, probably like late middle school, because I used to have that mindset, oh, if a girl is pretty, she stuck up if she wasn't smiling, right? And I remember one of my close friends, Willie, he was like, nah, bro, like, they be the coolest ones.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, what you mean? Like, yo, she ain't, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to speak. And so he's like, watch this. And we were in the mall.
Right.
This mosquito is, like, everywhere.
I see it.
You still see it?
Not now.
Okay, good. So we were in the mall, and he was like, yo, watch this. And he went up to, like, 10 just, like, fine chicks. And next thing you know, they smiling, laughing, joking, giving. He's like, yo, like, I'm telling you. And that changed everything for me around, like, 8th grade.
Right.
And I'm like, so all the chicks we thought was stuck up, like, they actually, like, mad cool? And so, thank God I didn't have to go through that, like, metamorphosis in adulthood. So what does a guy like me who isn't in that mind state, because I transitioned early, in a sense, how do I help with curtailing that type of behavior?
You hold your friends accountable. You don't laugh at it. You don't encourage it. If you are in the presence of it, you make sure you speak up, because I think being an ally means, first of all, asking the person who's oppressed or experiencing the injustice, how can I show up differently?
Right.
And then when you hear those tools, you use those tools. That is how you present yourself in allyship. Now, you don't need to become a mouthpiece for women. So obviously, if someone were talking to me on the street, allow me to handle it.
Right.
And if I ask you explicitly, and sometimes it may not be explicit because sometimes you don't always have that, but like, I'm thinking about the feature, like I think you picked up on the fact, like, yo, I'm gonna stay by her and make sure she's good. Yeah. And that's what I needed. And I think had I sat someplace else and then you sat next to me, that would have been a crossing of boundaries. So I think it's just really important to ask, how do I show up best for you to make sure that you feel safe?
Right.
And then when you do see a homeboy, or even, it doesn't even only have to be a homeboy. If you see a man being completely disrespectful,
Yeah.
whether overt or not, I think calling it out.
Gotcha.
That is how we start changing the direction of how men feel entitled to women's areas and spaces.
Right.
Because other men need to also say, like, I think as a black woman, it is probably the hardest thing.
Yeah.
It's at the bottom of the totem pole, honestly. Because we have to fight for ourselves.
Yeah.
And when we fight, we angry, we bitter. But if we don't say anything, well, then why, you must have wanted it because you were
Right.
silent. Like, there's never, so we need for our counterparts to ask us what does support look like and actually do it.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. And you talked about, at the lake when we were there. I am kind of in tune with certain things and how certain people are. And it was crazy because, back, me and you, and I told Zora, I was like, yo, me and her have never had that much conversation before.
Right.
Like, ever.
Right. And
she was like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, she was like, didn't you work with her? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And it made me think back to, I remember I hit you up when we were working out, because at the time, like DS, Lee, Max, which is Crystal, like,
Right.
I was like kind of, whether building camaraderie or
Right.
like talking to him a lot. And you were the one where I was like, why is she so aloof?
Yeah.
And so I was just like, you know what? Let me just hit her up
Right.
and see if I did something, if I
Right.
said something,
Right.
because y'all want the show to be all right.
Right.
And he was like, nah, like, I'm just keeping my professional
Yeah.
distance. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, all right, bet. Like,
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
And our interactions were always pleasant, but brief.
Yes.
Very, I don't even want to use the term standoffish. At first it was, but then
Yeah.
it was kind of like, okay, yeah, you cool, you all right. But yeah, here's my hand.
I take the observant role a lot, and
Right.
in my observer role, I'm just watching the way the space feels, how people talk with each other. Being Caribbean, you are like raised with this like overwhelming suspicion of everyone, and so
Right.
everyone gets the side eye until one day your spirit moves you in a different way. And like the last show that you attended at the Cardinal Park, I think like spirit just told me, yo, he's good people.
Gotcha.
And so I was able to just kind of let down that wall.
Right.
But that for me, it comes with time. Like I do come across as standoffish. Some people say intimidating.
And nothing's wrong with that either, though. For real.
It's just a way of protecting yourself. I think you have to be really aware of the spaces that you're in, and then when you don't know, you just have to kind of just go in there, like, hey, let me just pay attention and be vigilant. And so sometimes my hyper awareness or hyper vigilance can
Right.
come across as intimidating.
And that's the thing that I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't intimidated by, because
Yeah.
if I was intimidated, I probably wouldn't
Right.
even said anything.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make sure, like, yo, we good?
Yeah.
And then you was like, nah, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
straight,
yeah.
but I'm straight over here. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah, and respecting that allows there
Completely.
to be the trust, right?
Right.
Now, if you tried to bulldoze your way, come on, yo, then it would have been different. I would have been like, okay,
Yeah, this
is
nigga.
what we're talking about when we talk about safety.
Right.
Because if I know that I've checked in and made sure I did not offend, and this person's telling me it's okay, I'm going to trust that it is okay.
Yeah.
And either we're going to find a different sweet spot, or this is our sweet spot, and that's okay.
Right.
And you allowing that to be a thing allows us to organically enter a relationship that's closer
Right.
or stays the same.
And then just so happens.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's what's up. And that lets me know, because I'm always trying to grow, but not for real.
Faux growing?
Yeah, a little bit, but so like I'll tell people I've been the same person
Yeah.
almost my whole entire life, but I have, when I really look at it for real, there's certain things that I'm completely different in, that
Right.
I've grown in,
Right.
but it wasn't always intentional.
Right.
It was just kind of, I was put into this atmosphere, and I learned this, and then just subconsciously it's like, I learned this, so then I use that information.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to be more in tune with growing on purpose.
Yes.
And when people say certain things to me, or certain things happen, or I witness certain things, being able to be like, oh, okay, that right there is something. Let me think about that.
Right.
Let me, and sometimes it takes me a while.
Right, absolutely.
But I'm able to kind of pull back enough and not exert myself or
Right.
force myself on certain things or people
Right.
to move a certain kind of way. So I'm glad that we met
Yeah.
when I was in that space, because
Yeah.
had we met 2 years prior,
Right.
it would have been a whole different
All
situation.
things come together for the good.
This is true. This is true. So I know we're like going all the way back, transitioning. So you left teaching, and so now you said that you are now working a different.
In a different atmosphere. It is. I'm an assistant to an entrepreneur, and so
That's dope.
it is very fun to watch him. To watch him work, to watch him live this world fearlessly, because I have my own goals of entrepreneurship. So
Yeah.
what better way than to be under someone who's walking in that and
Right.
walking in it without all of the fears that I kind of assign to myself. He just leaps. He does his research and he's like, okay, I want it, I'm gonna get it.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple.
What does he do?
He has a company, an investment company, a marketing company. He does some stuff in drones. He's about to buy a bakery. He's definitely
what's
a
up.
man that's trying to get his hands into all these different industries.
Right.
He does I watch the way he researches, and then he's like, okay, draw up the contract. I want
Right.
it.
So you're basically getting
Front row seat.
right,
Of
all
all
of
the
it.
things, right? Because one of the things as an artist is, if you don't have an agent, you need to know how to market yourself. You
Yeah.
need to know your worth.
I know.
Yes. And so what is interesting, a couple of days ago, someone hit me up on Instagram for an opportunity to perform or whatever. And he's like, there's no compensation.
Well, there's no me.
I haven't been able to say that. I said it this go round. I was like, okay, Ashley, look at you. Because what we're not going to do is act like exposure can pay these bills.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And
Not the exposure that you were about to get
right.
me. Right.
Because this helps you more than it actually helps me.
Yeah.
So at this time, I'm personally not. But, I wish you the best in all your endeavors.
Right.
And that's, and I didn't feel guilt about it. I didn't feel, even in the conversation, typically I can't even find the words to say no. I said that and felt
Right.
good in that. So I'm appreciative of the journey that life has kind of fashioned itself out to be, because it's making me not only consider how I show up as my artist self, but the self that I need to be when negotiating.
Right.
So
what does entrepreneurship look like for you in the future as far as your artistry goes? Because 2 years ago, you became the 14th ranked
yes.
female poet in the world.
So entrepreneurship looks like doing art full time.
Okay.
I want my main sort of jam to be the partnership with the schools, where
Right.
I'm facilitating workshops and helping students in terms of challenging the outside shit they deal with and finding that avenue that helps you reconcile it as much as you can in the moment, so that you can still tend to the other parts of you.
Right.
I didn't feel like I had that access when I was in 10th grade.
Gotcha.
And I will say, kids today are so much more different. And so we need to make sure that they have access to these healthier ways of dealing. So that's my main, putting my nonprofit at the forefront. And letting that be my main thing. Editing, back burner, still creating, obviously. I'm working more towards being behind the scenes. So there is a Woman of the World, which is the competition you spoke of.
Yep.
I will actually be on the committee for that.
That one's coming from Baltimore next
yes,
year. Yeah.
and I will be on the committee helping with those efforts, and I'm super excited about
dope.
that. Yeah.
That's dope. I have not been to a Women of the World yet. I wanted to go to the one where you placed in, and I wanted to go this past year because I knew Ayana was going
Right.
back, and I I don't know, my schedule be so crazy, and then I just didn't prioritize
It's
it.
harder because it's in Dallas. It was in Texas,
You
right?
know,
So this go round, it's
Yeah,
on the
it's a
East
drive.
Coast. So that I think will be a lot more feasible.
Yeah.
And I think also this year when they did plan it, it was so in the air. Like
Right.
I didn't think it was happening until it was actually happening.
Yeah,
Because
because of COVID, yeah.
Exactly. So it was hard. It would have been hard to plan.
Yeah, because they didn't even have eye whips at all. Right?
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
They did not. No,
Yeah.
they had the international team.
Exactly.
And she had those going on at the same
Same
time.
time.
Yeah. And even the attendance with that was not what it would have been
Oh,
had
I'm
the
sure.
world been open. You know.
I'm sure.
So it's going to be a really, really good move. WALP's coming up. I
Right.
think it's going to be extremely good for like that particular community and the access poets who live on this side of the world will
Right.
have. So
What has slam poetry done for you?
I think that it has opened the door for me to see all of the possibilities that exist within poetry and performance and how to navigate both worlds. It has definitely been a door. For me, many people, into slam and like they love doing it. And that's like for me, I was very clear. Like this is leading me elsewhere.
Right.
I think about the ways in which it has helped. It has somewhat helped my stage presence, but not as much. But it has, and I think it has helped me with meeting people. Like
Right.
definitely, like being in same spaces with artists that I look up to or
Yeah.
people that I want to work with.
Who is an artist you look up to? That you've met?
Ayanna, definitely.
Okay.
I think I remember the first time hearing her. She has the ability to quiet the room.
Yeah.
And she hasn't even spoken yet. You know what I'm saying? It's just she takes a breath and everyone's just like hanging, waiting for her. And I love the way that she has the ability to speak poetically, but also her cadence, her delivery makes you feel like you can understand it. Because one of the things I'm always hearing is people not liking poetry because they
Right.
thought it was hard to understand. And she has a beautiful balance between delivering poetic with also vernacular that we can understand.
Right.
I have not met Jasmine Mans yet, but I love
And you
her
know
work.
she's been there.
I know.
Where were you at during, in other words, when
Where
she
was
headlined?
I?
Right, it was like, who knows, right?
Who knows?
It feels like 18 years ago. It was so dope when she came in.
I know.
Because I've been following Jasmine for God knows how long.
Yeah.
And so when we, didn't think I was going to be able to get a book, and I'm like, yo, just try.
Yeah.
And so when it worked out and she was here, picked her up from the airport, so we got to
Yes.
chill, made her a smoothie at the crib. And I'm like, yo, Jasmine Man is at my crib drinking a
Yeah.
smoothie. Yeah, she's phenomenal.
Yeah, she is.
She's
She
phenomenal.
is.
I think she's going to go down as one of the greats of our time.
She will. She will. There's so many poets. Ebony Stewart, Kyla Janae Lacey. There's just so many poets that I love what this space has allowed them to be able to
Right.
bring, and then also has allowed me to experience.
Right.
So,
What is slam poetry missing?
whew, that is a heavy question. I think it's missing adequate mentorship across different communities. Like, I know that there are parts of North Carolina that is very lucky, the ones that have access to blues, the ones that have access to Dasan. Amazing mentors.
Right.
But every community don't have blues in a Dasan. Because what happens is when your art falls in the wrong hands, it can take you and your art on a journey that is more harmful, that's more deleterious to your overall being,
Right.
and just kind of like derailing you. How many Langstons have we met? How many Maya Angelou's have we met? How many Lucille Cliftons have we met? Or that could have been, molded into that,
Right.
but they're not they're not getting what they need in terms of growing up in poetry. So mentorship, safe spaces, slam in itself, I think, is a beast, and you really need to have access to a person that can speak to how to survive it, because it can be something that actually kills and destroys your love for writing. So there are some people who believe like the best thing they did was get out of poetry slam.
I've followed a few people who I haven't met personally, but that they were like, yo, I'm leaving, and they made a statement when they left.
It's like, so the slam community is very much like a church community, right? And so I always see so many similarities on how we will excuse some of the people who are favorites in the community from their very harmful behaviors. And so people have been casualties in that. And so that's the part of it where if your love for writing is not developed enough, or if it's not something that isn't in conjunction with slam in particular, there are people who have walked away from writing altogether.
Yeah, I've hit certain poets up that I've seen on YouTube or something, and they're like, yo, I don't even do poetry at all anymore. And so then sometimes they'll engage with me in conversation. I'm just like, yo, and it's crazy because with what I do, I'm not writing for points. I'm not a slammer, and so I see that side, but from the outside. But I do recognize that there's this whole other thing there that I don't necessarily get to tap into. Very interesting.
Gift and a curse.
Yeah.
I think slam is what you make out of it. You have to be very clear about what it is that you want out of this space, and you have to understand some of the geniuses, they're genius because they are in so much relationship with their hurt and their toxic behaviors, and they get excused for it in the community. So that is probably not the person you want to be riding their coattails. I have been fortunate enough to understand what it means to separate the art from the artist. And a lot of us don't do that. We put these people on pedestals. If we're lucky enough, for some of us, we get into relationship with them, and then we're harmed by them, and then we don't know how to recover. And that's the part of it that's really sad, because you're seeing so many people, especially if they don't have that community that says, I know that this part of it wasn't great, but it's not all like that. So
life, right?
Yeah.
Life in every segment of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. As I've been going through this whole artist journey, if you will, which is so abrupt for me. I feel like I just kind of threw myself into all these different variations of how people live their lives, because artists are so different in their minds. And I've been trying to navigate how to, not for me to be different, but for me to understand other people's differences. And I mean, just in the last 3 years, it's just been a whirlwind for me, a good one though, of meeting people like yourself, or meeting, Ali, who is super out there in his mind, and you can call him an alien and all that good stuff. And even having trans friends, which when I was in high school, I had never even heard the word trans before. I wasn't sheltered, but the community that I lived in, because it was so small, was sheltered. And so just opening up my eyes to the world through something that I just decided I was going to do has been crazy. So then I'm like, well, how many other people are going through the same kinds of things? And so it's dope to have a lot of these type conversations, and just learn about who people are and why people are. Because we're all different, but we're all the same.
And that diversity, I think, allows us to see or get a glimpse into their own world, but then also be invited into their world in a way that creates that closeness. And I will say that's one of the things I really loved about Poetry Slam, was that it felt really welcoming to everyone from all types of life. Because we are these quirky individuals, and how that quirkiness shows can be this way or that way, and so you get to see that and experience that, and that was beautiful. Or that is beautiful.
So what I have not done so far with these podcasts, typically I flow with the conversation, right?
Yeah.
I connect the dots. I have to go off base because I have a question that I have to ask.
Non sequitur time, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's been so interesting to me that your name is Ashley.
Yeah.
And the two women that I know of that you've dated are both named Ashley.
Yes.
Have you thought about that?
You know, I've pondered, you know, what I'm attracted to, what is attracted to me. And it wasn't on purpose. Like it's not like I was like,
Right, and I was like, what
you
is
know,
that on? I'm like, maybe not.
Let me find the Ashley.
Right.
It's solely off of, so I'm a sapiosexual, and so when I am in conversation with a woman who is clearly brilliant, that is the turn on. And then we hope that there are these other ways that we can connect, and you know, it's just by coincidence that both of their names.
I was like I
Ashley.
promise you, like mine just, I'm like, yo, and I'm like, and their names are all spelled different, correct?
Their names are spelled.
Oh, for real? The same? Okay.
But my name is spelled differently.
Right, because you got the two E's. But I was just like, yo, like, and you know, I got so much time to think.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm just like, yo, does she only date Ashley?
No, she does not.
Right.
She's fairly new into coming into herself and walking in that truth, and in that path, I have been
connected
led
to some
to
Ashley,
other people whose mothers did not want different for them.
Right.
And named them Ashley.
Got you. So in the beginning, I asked you, who do you think you are? Now, as we wrap up, I ask you, who do you think you will be?
You know, one of the things that I am going to start with is, in answering that, is my hair. So 5 years ago,
which is cute, by the way.
Thank you. 5 years ago, I decided to start on a lock journey. I have a blog, and I'm going to probably write this as my next blog. I'm like literally working through the ideas of what it meant to enter into a lock journey. And 5 years ago, I was not comfortable with the starting of it. So I wore a wig for several months, and then I was like, nope, we're just gonna get extensions.
Right.
I'm very used to kind of just taking the elevator way.
Right.
I'm not going to say that the first set of locks did not teach me things. It did. It taught me about my lack of patience, of like actually planting a seed and seeing it through.
Right.
Because there's a difference between planting the seed and or getting something that is already pretty much grown, and then cutting off of that and growing. You don't get to go through the adversity and have that appreciation, and you don't know how to steward it in a way that's long lasting. So breaking away from the first set of locks and re-entering this new journey is a reminder hey, you actually don't have to speed through some of these processes because you're forfeiting on the ability to develop certain skills that you need to aid you later on.
Right.
And so who I will be is someone that I am creating in this moment and moments to come. And I can't fully answer that actually, other than saying I've cut the dead and I'm starting with the things that are going to generate more fruit, that are going to be in multiplying amounts, right? And I can only say, like, in this moment, I'm working on being my favorite self.
Right.
And
my favorite self.
Yes, I saw a meme that said, "Be your favorite self."
Right.
Because best, I think, can be synonymous with excellence, and Black excellence is problematic sometimes because it puts a pressure on yourself. But if I'm my favorite self could just be a person who just wants to brush your teeth and get back into bed. There's a celebration in that, whereas best self speaks to, or it kind of pushes out this idea that I have to show up a certain way to be considered best. But if I'm my favorite self, it doesn't matter what condition I'm at, I get to still celebrate that, wherever my mood is. And so focusing on being my favorite self every day instead of this idea of perfection. That's the will be.
That's gonna set somebody free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think somebody that went all the way to the end of this episode will be able to take that and internalize it.
I hope so. It's been really helpful for me because that allows me to literally be in conversation with all the range of emotions that I feel instead of just only being cognizant or showing up for the ones that are positive.
Now you stepping on my toes.
You know, I was hoping I would a little bit.
Now you stepping on my toes. That's what's up. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
It's like, the past, 3 weeks we've talked more than we've ever talked in 3 years, but it's dope, and I'm glad that, you feel safe in the space.
Thank you for the journey that you've done to lead you here, right? This journey of being responsible to how you show up in the world and also allowing people to show up in a way that's authentic to them. That is what allows the safety, to know that, hey, I come into this space this way and I accept the way you come in. I'm not going to try to contort it. I'm not going to try to question it, challenge it. I'm not going to demand that you show up differently. I'm just going to accept you as you are, and that gives the safe feeling. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So that's the episode, y'all. Tune in next time for the next episode of Who Do You Think You Are?
Bow.